So let me start, then you can take.
Yes.
A very good morning to all, and back to SMS and sequential reading of the sections. And today we are on for section 40 and 41. And we as a admin group have given a deep thought that whether we have to take section 40 or 41, or we jump to next sections. But as has been our experience, that whenever we think that these are basic sections, so whenever the speaker comes and gives us food for thought, then we come to know that there are some other issues or some other angles from which we can interpret and understand the sections. So continuing with our journey of section 40.
Arpit bhai, your voice went off. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. I think Arpit will be joining. Let's start. Okay, we are only looking at two simple sections. Section 40, which is the first written, and which says that every registered person who has made outward supplies in the period between the date which he becomes liable to registration till the date on which the registration has been granted shall be declared in the first return furnished by him after the grant of registration. Now, there are key points that we need to first look at. It is, let me just switch to the word. So basically, we are saying that the date of liability to register to date on which the registration has been granted. Now, these are the two key things: the date of liability to register and the registration has been granted. Now, this we need to understand. Want to hear from members that is it the date when I applied for the registration or any other date?
Sir, it is mentioned that date on which he become liable for registration. So accidentally I have crossed my turnover limit, and later on by the data of my Paytm or some or other payment methodology, they tracked me that my turnover has crossed, and they approached me that I have to pursue this, I have to take the registration. I think from that also is again an event where I can say that I have become liable for registration, and therefore every turnover and transaction which has happened prior to that date, I have to declare that in the return and have to pay the tax on that. That what I am reading from this word date on which he becomes liable for registration.
Now let's look at section 63, the assessment of unregistered persons. So when the department is now feeling, and especially in Karnataka, we have issued 18,000 notices to all these people whose turnover has crossed and they did not take the registration. Will section 40 be applicable for them when the assessment is being done under this section? Let's look at the another issues which we will have to be dealing with. One of the issue is application for registration. Okay. Now, when we say application for registration, Rule 10, we say the registration shall be effective from the date on which the person became liable to registration, where the application has been submitted within 30 days. Now, if I submit the application after 30 days, let's take the example that let's say liable to register on 1st Jan 25, applied for registration on say 5th February 25. Okay, let's look at these 2 dates. Now, when a registration is being issued, when the registration certificate that would be issued, what would be the registration date? So, say registration has been granted on, we will take on 1st March 25. What will be effective date of the registration? What would be the effective date of the registration? What do you think? Don't go with this typo errors.
Sir, ideally, when we fill any registration form, it asks you a particular date where you have crossed the limit or where you become liable to be registration.
Right.
So that date, I think, in most of the time, is mentioned in the effective date as an effective date of registration, even though it is granted later on, but effective date is considered that date.
Yeah. So now this is the registration application. So here we specifically says when am I liable to register? And ideally, even though if I am applying the registration on 1st March, the registration ideally is granted on 1st Jan. But provided I am submitting within 30 days. But in this case, I have exceeded the 30 days and I made the application for registration on 5th February. So what would be the effective date in the current case? Would it be 1st Jan or 5th February?
It will be 5th February.
Okay. Any other views? And by the way, this doesn't neither the rule. Arugya,
Yes, effective date will be 1st Jan only because that is the day I am liable to register.
but now what will be the I didn't apply for within 30 days. So what happens to this?
Even then, the registration will be granted with effect from 1st January only. That will be granted within 1st January.
Arugit will be from 5th Feb 25 because we have not applied within 30 days. No?
Suresh ji, आपका voice थोड़ा low है.
Actually, because the person has not applied within 30 days, so the date of application will be deemed as a date of from the registration. I think it is a provision. It is the law.
Okay, so actually,
believe,
if
sir,
rule 10,
I think it will be 1st of March. I think I can't remember straight away. There's a rule which says that if it has not been made within 30 days, it will be the date of grant of registration.
That is correct. Oh,
correct, exactly. So we have 10 sub-rule 1 and sub-rule 2. What I have actually produced here was only this. So if in the current case, if I have applied on after 30 days, if the application which is done is after 30 days, then the registration effective date will be the date of the grant. It would be prospective and it cannot be retrospective. So someone who is failing to apply 30 days, so the registration will not be backdated. The registration will be granted to the prospective date. So since the registration is applied late, so the registration would be date on which the registration has been granted. That would be the effective date. In the current example that we are seeing, it would be not 1st Jan 25. It would be 1st March 25. Okay, anyone has any other counter review? I'll come back to section 40 again from this. Anyone wants to counter this?
No, but what will be the date of liability?
Date of liability is 1st Jan. The liability date is 1st Jan. But my registration certificate is 1st March.
Yes.
So which means you
Registration
will have to,
certificate would be 1st March. The liability date will continue to be 1st Jan.
which means you will have to pay interest for the period, from 1st January till 1st March
Correct.
on that liability.
Correct.
And one more repercussion of this is that we will not be allowed ITC from 1st Jan, but it will be from 1st March only.
Because my effective date is 1st March. Now, we will deal with 18.1 in a while, but let's look at this. Now, I'll come back to this. So, in my first return, the requirement of reporting is who has made outward supplies between the date of liability to the date on which registration has been granted. So, the question to all is, in reporting in my first return, do I include my 1st Jan to 1st March or not?
It has to be included.
Yeah. So, for the purpose of section 40, even though I have delayed filing the application, I violated rule 10, but the section 40 doesn't say the registration date. It says it would still say the date of liability. So in case, even though someone has applied the registration late, so the point to be noted is the date of liability of the registration matters for including in the first return, even though my grant happened on 1st March. So when I say my grant happened on 1st March, so let's look at the returns that I'll be filing. So I'll only be filing March 25 R1 on 11th April 25, March 25 3B on 20th April. Okay. Now, the word written is the first return. So now we are saying first return means 3B. We still doesn't recognize R1 as my return. Now, they are saying that who has made outward supplies, then shall be including in the first return. It is still, though the CBIC circular has said that R1 also to be considered as written. Now, points to be noted is how do I include this turnover from 1st Jan up until 1st March. So from 1st Jan up until 1st March, which means whole of January, whole of February. So 2 months supplies. So how do we deal with the 2 months supplies?
Sir, ideally
report?
it can be, sir, shown as a B2C supply.
Okay.
And tax can be paid by way of GSTR 3B. And because if we are going to show B2B invoice, it will not permit of the prior date. Absolutely.
Right.
And that is why it has to be shown as B2C supplies in that return.
Venuji,
Yes,
Could you
sir.
please look at the revised return?
if there is a provision for issuing of a revised invoice in case of a new registration.
Revised return.
But
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. You are audible.
But that is available only in case wherein the registration applied within 30 days of the date of which we become liable for registration. So in that case, if the registration would have been applied within 30 days, I would have issued a revised invoice and there would have been no liability to pay interest on that amount. But since I have applied beyond 30 days, so that revised invoice concept would not be applicable. And technically, for the period from which I am liable and to the date from which I have been granted, I cannot issue a revised invoice. And since I cannot issue a revised invoice, I should ideally pay it through DRC 03 and not through 3B.
Yeah. So
because in that case, I would be giving an incorrect reflection of my liability, because the return would not be allowing any date prior to the date from which I have been granted. and if I would be reflecting that date, then I would be avoiding the interest, and it would be an incorrect reflection of the liability.
Exactly. So now
Sir, just
we
one
said there
question.
is option 2 called revised invoice. Abhi aata hoon. So now it is important to know when we read section 31(3), the revised invoice, it says May within 1 month from the date of issuance of registration certificate, issue a revised tax invoice against invoices issued during the date from the effective date of registration to the date of issue of the certificate. Now let's look at this. The words here used, the words the 1 month from the date of issuance of certificate, it is now saying for the transactions that have happened, wherein the supply has been made during the period from effective date of registration to the date of issuance of certificate. Now, here the effective date of registration, when we, let me show the REG 6 also, because these words are important for us to decide and say whether whether it applies or not. Okay. So now in the registration certificate, it says the date of liability. In the registration certificate, it actually takes date of liability. Let's open actual registration certificate and also see.
Venu sir, in between, can I make a query?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Free.
Actually, in case of a person who was liable to get registered in 24-25,
right.
I am seeing his books have account. No, he has not got registration. No, he will apply no.
Right.
Presently, with the date of liability shown as of 24-25.
Right.
So in that case also, 24-25's amount of taxes or amount of turnover has to be shown in the first return only. Yes, as per the law. First
as per the law.
First return.
So, legally, from the date you are liable, you have to show as per section 40. Now, the only question is, how do I show? We have one option. Someone says B2C. We have another, I think Sujata madam said revised tax invoice. RPG says DRC 03. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I'm surprised the date of liability is not filled in this thing. Let me see if there is any other certificate which shows.
And sir, in conjunction with that, suppose I have got turnover of 1 crore rupees.
Yeah.
24-25. I will adjust the liability in between only, and I will in the balance sheet no. I will be breaking that turnover into tax and taxable turnover 1 crore. So then I will be showing in the balance sheet as a liability of that amount, and no, I will.
But sir, for a moment we will ignore what I will do in the financials. How will I show? We will ignore. Now the only question which comes is, can I do a B2B revised tax invoice and B2C? How do I do is the point. So RPG, I want to come back to you asking that why would you say that DRC 03 and why not revise the tax invoice?
Because in that case, my date of registration would be the date on which I have been granted the registration. Since in the case I have been given a registration beyond, I have applied for registration beyond 30 days.
You have applied. But here, if you see a registered person within 1 month from the date of issuance of certificate, the only
From the
challenge
effective
here,
date.
exactly, the only challenge here is the effective date of registration of certificate to the date of issue of certificate. So now
Yes.
here this is applicable only if the application is made before. So if they say that it would be effective from 1st Jan, only in that scenarios I can issue a revised tax invoice. Otherwise, I cannot issue a revised tax invoice. Now, in a revised tax invoice, so continuing back, now the question is, should I show in DRC 03 or 3B? I would still take a view that it has to be shown in the 3B and not DRC 03, because the section 40 says is liability and not the application, right? Now we will look at a happy path. If let's say
Venuji, just Gurjiji also said rule 10 sub rule 2.
Yeah.
Because it uses the term effective date. So 10 sub rule 2 says that registration shall be effective from the date on which the person becomes liable to registration, where the application for registration has been submitted within a period of 30 days from such date.
Correct.
And for 10 sub rule 3, where an application has been submitted by the applicant after the expiry of 30 days from the date of it become liable to registration, the effective date shall be the date of grant of registration.
Agreed. So what I am saying is, for revised tax invoice, the section of revised tax invoice doesn't apply, but section 40 of reporting of liability, because the words used in section 40 is not the effective date of registration. The section 40 used the date on which he's become liable to the registration. So there is a difference between the words used in section 31 and section 40. Because of that, the revised tax invoice cannot be issued, but the liability has to be fully shown.
But in that case, the interest has to be paid from the date from which I was liable.
Correct.
So my submission was that since DRC 03, in that case, we would be able to properly reflect the relevant month for which I am paying the tax. So therefore, I would be correctly declaring and letting the department know that I was liable from a previous date and I have discharged the liability for the previous date. If I would be showing it in my first return, then the department would be saying, oh, you have given a wrong reflection. So therefore, for a correct presentation to the department also, so that in case any future liability comes, I am safe from my point of view. That's why I had suggested DRC 03.
Yeah, I definitely agree. In fact, while finalizing GSTR 99C, my team says that, sir, do not show anything in table 10 and 11. The people doesn't understand the concept, and they ask me to give me a breakup of subsequent invoices, in which month you have paid, show me the exact proof of payment. Like when I made an error, I made a payment and I adjusted next month. How do I challenge and show it? So now practically, I completely agree with your view that DRC 03 is the right thing. All that I am saying is 3B is like filing in 3B is not invalid. That so interest is applicable in this case.
Venu sir, in my example also,
yes, sir.
03 for 24-25 will be the perfect solution, because if I show it in the current return, my turnover of 24-25, then there will be chaos, there will be a mismatch between income tax and GST also. So DRC 03 for the last financial year 24-25 will be the best course of action, I think so.
I have a doubt over here. I guess we cannot select period previous to registration period while submitting DRC 03.
No. So DRC 03, 3B, everything will be current date.
Okay. So current date, but for previous liability separately paid.
Yes.
Okay.
No, but DRC 03, I can select a previous date also. There is no issue. I can select a previous year also.
Yes. We can select previous date also.
There is no restriction in DRC 03 for selecting a period prior to the date of registration.
Just want to point out a practical situation where what department is doing here is that they are granting a temporary registration to all those people who were liable to register, and they have not registered. And they are also asking to take a regular registration in the regular course for the I mean current businesses. So what they are asking is you should pay tax in the temporary registration for the previous period, and you start paying tax henceforward on the new registration. That is what they are doing here.
So what would
And
be
Yes,
the effective date of the
Ramandeep,
temporary
this
registration?
is what had happened in one of our case wherein a registration of the client was suspended, say in 2024, and the period for revocation was also expired. So after say 1.5 years, he came to us that he has to pay the tax. Now, when we applied the registration, the department rejected the registration since you have not paid the earlier liability, would not be granting a new registration. But the time for revocation had also expired, so we applied for a temporary registration to the officer. He granted a temporary registration. We paid the liability for the intervening period and then applied for a fresh registration.
correct, sir. This is what here also they are
Yes.
saying.
Yes.
Yes.
So let's look at the scenario 2, where the liability to register is 1st Jan and applied for registration on 25th Jan. For various reasons, the registration has been granted on 1st March. Now, in this case, the effective date of registration would be 1st Jan only. So there is a delay wherever the grant of the certificate. So now the application date to the grant date. So now I have applied for 1st Jan. So all the turnover between 1st Jan to 2 months turnover, this will travel to revised tax invoice. And in the question of revised tax invoice, you are only reporting now, and there was a delay in the grant. In my view, the interest is not applicable because you are filing within the time. Any questions, any contradictory points to anyone? So in the earlier scenario, you cannot issue revised tax invoice and interest is applicable. And in the current scenario, you will issue a revised tax invoice and interest is not applicable. Are we all in the same page?
Open, yeah. Will the GSTR one be opened for entering the past month's return?
No. So, okay. So when we say revised tax invoice, Jan and Feb transactions will have an invoice date 1st March 2025. So you will be issuing the invoice newly as 1st March 25. The invoice date itself, you will be dating the invoice to the 1st March 25. So you will be reporting them in your first return. Because they are now revising to the date, accordingly, interest is also not applicable.
Venu sir, is it only the date of invoice is moved to 1st of March or
No,
time
tax
of
invoice
supply?
also, because original invoice I have not even collected the tax from the customer. I could have collected the gross value. Now I am bifurcating the taxable amount and tax amount also. So the contents, everything is now issued. I couldn't even have reported for the purpose of availing, even both B2B and B2C, if we have to see. What I'm saying is, you are now revising it to the current date with the Rule 46.
So time of supply is not getting postponed, right? It is only that they are enabling you to raise a revised invoice so that your customer can take the input tax credit and you also get an opportunity to collect the tax. But the time of supply still remains the date when you made the supply.
Right.
And so interest should apply. So this, I think, is more of an enabling provision to allow the recipient to claim credit and for you to for you to be allowed to collect the tax. But
Right.
I like your argument, sir. Actually, the way we can, try to see if interest can be avoided using the argument which you have put forth, sir.
Right. Okay.
No,
So
but
Hanif
Venuji,
has a very valid point. Yes.
Venuji, if we go to time of supply, it says the time of supply of goods shall be either of the following dates: the date of issue invoice by the supplier or the last date on which he is required under section 31 to issue the invoice. So in
Right.
this case, for the first for the revised invoice, my last date is within 30 days. So there would be no levy of interest, if I do not issue an invoice within 30 days and supposedly I issue an invoice on say 35th day, then the interest would be applicable for the entire period from which I was liable to pay and when I issued the invoice.
So Anish,
I still think there is a difference between invoice and revised invoice.
No, but it is providing for section 31. Earlier there was a
revised
reference
is
for
also 31 3A. Earlier this has got changed. So now the entire 31 is included. So 31 3A is also an invoice.
Definitely an interesting argument to think of. I have not thought from that perspective, but yeah, it's a very interesting argument.
Anishji, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. What Viniju is saying is absolutely correct. Only the date will change to 1st of March. I did the same. In our case, the registration was granted. In the case of death of proprietor, there was transfer case and we applied in 30 days. And the registration was granted late later on. I shared the screenshot with Viniju on WhatsApp. The date of registration was granted later on. So we filed the return and we just moved the date of invoice to 1st of Feb in current example to 1st of Feb.
Yeah. So thank you, Nilesh. So this is the thing. So certificate has been issued on 2nd September and the liability period is 24th July 2003. So you can see whole of July, August, and it went on 2nd September. The kind of similar example that we have taken. So the Jan got issued in March. So here we can see the July got issued in September. But my validity period started from 24th July. And as Nilesh said that in his case, he has not taken the interest, but definitely when the department asks for interest, these are the 2 points we can see. We never know. Department will try to make their case, but we also need to be ready with our points.
And when we prior to that, this amendment from 1st of February 19, this time limit was only applicable for 31(1). Now, since 1 has been omitted, so now this time limit is applicable for entire 31.
Right. Yes. So with this, I rest the case of section 40 and we will go to section 41. Anything? Yes.
So in the previous example and compare with this, in both the cases, it says that you can issue a revised invoice within 30 days from the date of effective date of registration. Correct. So there is no embargo whether you have applied for registration within 30 days or you have applied registration after 30 days. Right. So in both the scenarios, I think you can issue a revised invoice because in the first scenario you said you cannot issue revised invoice.
Okay, so let me take you to the wordings of section 31. Where did I put it here? So the issuance from the date of issuance, 1 month from the date of issuance of certificate of registration, he already issued during the period from effective date of registration. Now here, the point, the one which I have highlighted in the red color is effective date of registration. And this is what we are seeing here. If you apply the effective date of registration will be changing if you are filing late. Rule 10. If you look at Rule 10, where application has been submitted after the expiry of the thing, the effective date will be the date of grant of registration. Because of this, you will not be able to issue revised tax invoice.
No, that is on the liability part, right?
No. Liability is from the date of liability. There is no doubt in it. Reporting in first written is in section 40. That is also no doubt. The question is, can I route through revised tax invoice and don't pay interest, or I cannot issue revised tax invoice, pay interest and pay through DRC 03 or the one. So it's only the deviation is only that. No question on the liability or no question on the reporting in section 40.
Right. So this provision says you can issue a revised invoice.
From what period you can issue?
Right. Yes. from the effective date of registration to the date of
Correct.
issue of certificate.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Sir, what about the numbering invoice? When you you have to declare the numbers also in while you file the R1.
Right.
That numbering, will that be a different numbers for invoices?
You are now issuing till this point. You are like such GST doesn't belongs to you. It is not your arena.
Correct. Correct.
Now, given that it is not your arena, you give the wording called bill of supply, tax invoice, exempt invoice, whatever you write and give, no one cares. Even if you are unregistered and issuing a tax invoice also, it doesn't really matter. Just because you are keeping the heading as tax invoice, it doesn't make it as a tax invoice. You got to be a registered person. So the numbering for you will start from the day when you are issuing. You can continue the old numbering and again continue. It's up to you. So there is no requirement in the law that numbering should start from 001. I can always start my numbering from 541. That is not an issue.
Okay.
All right. So let's move to another section, which is 41, where it says every registered person shall subject to conditions and restrictions as may be prescribed. Okay. Now, the question that comes is, what are the conditions which are prescribed under section 41? Because the wording, using of the words and actually the prescriptions coming. Be entitled to avail the credit of eligible input tax as self-assessed. So, referring to our section 59, in his returns, and such amount shall be credited to electronic credit ledger. Now, this was the earlier one. Then we had this has been substituted. The whole of this has been substituted. Earlier, there was no change. The section 2, which has now come with a new change and the proviso. Let me copy the earlier one also for the ease of reference. Now, let's look at the earlier. The credit referred to in subsection 1 shall be utilized only for payment of self-assessed output tax. Now, that is now changed to credit of input tax availed by the registered person under subsection 1 in respect of such supply of goods or services or both. The tax payable whereon has not been paid by the supplier. I will highlight it. In such manner as been prescribed. And the proviso which has been inserted is where the supplier is making the payment of the tax payable in respect of the efforts and supplies, the registered person may re-avail the amount. So now the credit can be availed only when the tax being paid by the supplier. So it is now saying that if the tax payable has not been paid, then along with the applicable interest, we have to reverse. Now let's jump to Rule 37A. Okay. Question is this notification where the rule came in. Is issued. Am I seeing a wrong notification? This is for 32. I'm seeing I should see 12 oblique. Let's go to the notifications. let me open from the system. Sorry.
Notification number
12.
Yes.
Okay, so now
Sir, it is, I think, inserted by way of notification number 26 by 2022.
You are seeing a rule or insertion of the section?
Rule. Yeah. So now this rule has been inserted in notification 26, where our table 14, 15, R1, everything has come. Now the question to all is, can I link the wordings, the conditions which have been restricted in section 1 or the conditions which have been restricted in section 2 to rule 37? Or is it linked to section 16 to the fond of section clause C? Where do you think the place for this, where the tax has not been paid by the supplier, in which also says that is subject to the provisions, the tax charge in respect of such supply has actually been paid to the government, which is there in our section 16 subsection 2 clause C. So now rule 37 refers to which place? By the way, the notification is issued with the power under 164. Any comments, any questions to anyone?
So Vinky, what you are trying to say, is it linked to section 41 or 16(2)(c)?
Yeah.
See, section 16(2)(c) is subject to section 41.
Right.
And section 41 itself is provided, rule 37 is linked with section 41, and since 16(2)(c)
Rule
subject
37 is not linked to section 41.
Huh?
Rule 37 is not linked to section. So now we need to presume. By the way, this is rule section 41 is in the returns chapter, and chapter 5 ITC is in section 16. Both are two different chapters. And rule 37A is when it is introduced in the notification, nowhere the power of any of the sections is referred to. It is just issued under regular 164, which otherwise that's a common section.
Yes, but every rule is issued under one. If you go through the registration rules, they are also being issued under section 164, because the power to issue rules is given therein. But whenever, if we go through section 41, the conditions which are to be prescribed, those conditions, whether correctly or not, that is a separate thing. Whether constitution is valid or not, that is a separate thing. But the conditions which have to be prescribed by way of section 41 have been given in rule 37A, because it is on the similar lines of section 41.
Correct. So the point which I want to now mention is, with the insertion of this proviso, this section 41 reference in section 16, which has come in, this is the basis for our fight of the earlier cases, because now this has been amended with the Finance Act 21. Yeah, 2018 Finance Act. Yeah. Now, the cases where the non-payment of the tax by the suppliers, we should only be looking from the date Rule 37A has come in. That means I will only be reversing the ITC if the supplier has not paid up until September, which is not visible. The date which came in on 26 December 22, will I take a case that the payment of tax by the supplier, the payment of the tax by the supplier is applicable to me only from the effective date of 37A. Prior to this period, section 16 subsection 2C, I can still defend with all the High Court judgments that fight with the supplier and not with the recipient. Can we take that plea?
But 16(2)(c) was subject to section 41 from the start.
Correct. But now,
16(2)(c).
exactly. So now I want to say that the words here is the conditions and restrictions as may be prescribed, which was not prescribed till Rule 37A. This is what, that's why I have highlighted this. Till Rule 37A coming in, the conditions and restrictions were not prescribed. Hence, the effective date for the availment of credit subject to the supplier payments links to the 37A.
Section 41 was there in the earlier, as per the earlier form.
Correct.
And prior to that, prior to the replacement, it provided a credit referred to in subsection 1.
36(4). Okay, prior to this, we only have the 36(4) coming in 20%, 10%, 5%, and 0%. Otherwise, there was no conditions and restrictions prescribed, saying that the tax being paid, they are only restricting to visibility in 2A. So R1 was filed, 3B was not filed by the supplier. Let's take a case where supplier has not paid the taxes, but it was visible in R1. 2A, it was visible.
So even though the prior pre-amended section 41 also have the conditions and restriction, but the restriction was not prescribed under Rule 31, 37A.
Correct.
And that is what plea we can take up for that prior period. Since there was no prescription, no restriction prescribed, it can be allowed.
Yeah. So this is the only point, by the way, for me on section 41.
Venuji, for this we have to read section 16(2)(c), section 41 and section 42. See, section 6, why 16(2)(c) is subject to 41? Because 16(2)(c) only allows credit upon payment of tax by the supplier.
Correct.
But in the earlier form of section 41,
right.
Section 41 used to give a credit on a provisional basis.
Correct.
For 2 month period, because 1, 2, 3 was there.
Right.
And in section 42, there was a provision that once a credit has been availed on a provisional basis, it has to be reversed if the supplier has not paid the tax as per section 42. So technically,
the reversal was not mandated by the taxpayer, but it is a system-based reversal. Let me also show
yes,
that.
That is a point that section 42 rule 69 matching never came.
Correct.
Because rule 69 said that matching can only take place when the due date of filing of 1 and 2 is expired, and since 2 has not been prescribed till date, so there is no due date for 2, and section 42 cannot say. So in the earlier form, how it had to be seen, 16(2)(c) was subject to section 41. Why subject to 41? Because it only allows credit for payment of tax. Section 41 was on a provisional basis, and provisional credit had to be reversed next month by way of section 42. So once it was reversed, it was never treated to have been availed, and it could have been re-availed only upon payment of tax. So that is a valid point taken by you also, that although there was a provision for availment of provisional credit and reversal thereof, But then 41 and 42 never came into effect, and they had to be deleted from 1st of October 2022. So prior to 1st of October 2022, there was no such mechanism which allowed, which provided for the reversal of the and reclaim of the credit.
Yeah. These are the only points. I completely agree with the view. So we have a very solid ground for 16 subsection 2 clause C. Till rule 37A is the only point which I want to communicate.
Venuji, there is one more point which I would like to
yes,
share with you. If you go to section 41(1),
let me share. Yeah.
So it says every registered person shall, subject to such conditions as may prescribe, be entitled to avail the credit of ITC. So the term which they have used in section 41(1) is availment of ITC.
Right.
And if we go through section 16 subsection 4, it uses the term taking of ITC.
Okay. Now I didn't do the distinction. Let me see. The word here we are saying is avail, and I never 16 we are saying the entitled to take credit. So we are now distinguishing.
Yes. Yes. So what we have taken an argument in 16(4) is that taking and availment are two different things post section 41, and the intent of the legislature is pretty clear that availment is only when it is taken in 3B, and taking is something which is prior to being reflected in 3B, and therefore take has to be linked with with the books of account, not with the return, because if the intent would have been the same, then section 41 would also have used the word take, not avail.
Yeah. Okay, this is only the lawyer's language. I am not a lawyer, and, but a very good distinction to fight on, because for the judge, both are different. Take is different from avail. So take is books, avail is returns.
And the legislature was well aware of the word take, because section 41 has been amended post 16(4).
Right.
So it cannot be said that they were not aware that there is a distinction between take and avail.
Right. Very valid point. Though as a practicing CA, I wouldn't fight this case, but yes, you as a lawyer, you will be fighting this case.
That I can recall, sir, that plea we used to take every time for the 16(4) proviso. I mean, this 16(4) block credit that this speaks about only for recording in the books of account.
Yes. Yes. So that argument further gets strengthened from some amended section 16.
Amended. Yeah, I completely get your point. Anything in section 41 which we need to cover? We are kind of bang on time.
Venuji, once for rule 37A.
Yeah.
So if we go through rule 37A, so it says rule 37A, sub rule 1. So it says where ITC has been availed by registered in the return in form 3B for a tax paid in respect of such invoice debit note, the details of which have been furnished by the supplier.
Right.
In the statement and outward supply in GST 1 or using the invoice furnishing facility, but the return in 3B for the tax paid corresponding for the said statement of outward supplies has not been furnished by the supplier. So
right.
In section rule 37A, it is not saying that the tax has been paid by the supplier. It is only saying that the return has not been furnished by the supplier. Now in that return, whether the supplier has not paid, whether the supplier has paid the tax or not paid the tax, the rule 37 is silent about it. It is only about furnishing of the return by the supplier.
Now with the DRC 01B and 1C being there, I think now the government themselves have assumed the liability of assessing the supplier who has declared the supply but not paid the taxes. So from the recipient perspective, again, it is a presumption. If the 3B has been filed by the supplier, there is a presumption the taxes have been paid.
Yes, but for DRC 1B and 1C, they are also issued only if the difference is more than 25 lakh. They are not issued for a smaller differences.
No, they are issued. Even few thousands also it is issued.
We are not received. We have not received till date. So what I got the even if I assume that he has filed and DRC 1B has been issued and the supplier has not paid the taxes.
Not my responsibility. As a recipient, not my responsibility.
Yes, because the term here is used only furnished. So if my supplier has furnished his return, even though you might not have paid the taxes, then also rule 37A and 41 restriction is not applicable. And once it is not applicable, 16(2)(c) would not also be applicable because it is subject to section 41. So if my supplier has furnished the return and even though he has not paid the taxes, then also 16(2)(c) would not be applicable.
Absolutely, I completely agree. It's like I am on this view that once 3B is filed, it is not my responsibility. It's a government responsibility to catch the supplier.
And that is coming from legal provision.
Correct.
We used to take the ground, but that is coming from the legal provision.
Legal provision, right. I think very mindful for us to rethink. And that is why one advantage of SMS is we keep reading the sections in between the lines and see the words they have used, how different they are between rule sections and different sections. Thank you for bringing this, Arpit bhai.
So 100 thank you from you to bring for discussing section 40. And as we discussed, we took 35 full minutes in discussing section 40.
Correct.
Right. Okay, we are on time, 10 o'clock.
Yes. Thank you, Venuji. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And I think every time we revisit the sections, we think that we are learning everything new.
Correct.
Thank you, Venuji. Thank you, RPG. Thank you, Ji.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Venuji. Thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah, have a wonderful weekend. Yeah, bye.
Yes.